let's talk about the terrible psychologists. Okay, it's only a couple of
I know a whole
sentences.
building full of them.
Okay, well, this this is it from Ego and Archetype, page 286. Okay, the majority of those who term their vocation psychology are not aware of the reality of the psyche. Okay, are not aware of the reality of the psyche. It is considered to be behavior, conditioned neurological reflexes, or cell chemistry, but the psyche itself is nothing. In the words of our text, it can neither be seen, felt, nor weighed. Now, when he's talking about text, he's talking about the Philosopher's Stone and alchemy, because this is from the last chapter of Ego and Archetype, which is about the Philosopher's Stone. So at the beginning of it, he has a 2-page reading from the alchemists about what alchemy was all about. And then he goes through each of the paragraphs, much as we've done tonight. But basically he's saying psychologists don't have a clue about this stuff. And non-Jungian psychologists, right. And the Jungian psychologists aren't letting on because it's their business, so why would they tell the rest of us? Right. So we have to just pretend we know something and try to figure it out. But it's very interesting to realize that, okay, that this is so much deeper than what they're talking about. And anyway.
Well, you don't get funding, for Jungian, because there's no real way to. You can't chop it up and test it.
Yeah, I suppose that's an issue, but
Because you can take something.
But there needs to be, because we're killing one another. Okay, we're killing one another because we believe in different gods, but Jung said, hey, it's all the same, really, in the end. And so why are we killing each other over this? And so from a political perspective, it's incredibly important. Maybe not from a theological perspective, because all the pastors are making their living by talking about the Bible, so why would they buy in on Jung?
I just don't think you can get all the people in the same room at the same time.
Well, and they'll start screaming at you.
Not in the U.S. anyway.
I mean, what you're talking about is we need to change, but I just don't see. Nobody's going to agree on how you change. It's where
Bunch
to
from
go.
a position.
Everybody's got the answer in their own sphere of influence and understanding.
Right.
And that's why I think it's beyond us. I don't think as a species we can do it. Which is why you want to read my book and stuff.
Well, I'll
We
look
do.
I do want to read that, but
Because I think we have to, it may not even matter. I think we have to become another species.
we may have to.
Imitation, that's what we're in, and we're rebirth.
We're going to be reborn as something else. But isn't it understanding that you have a problem and then you can fix it? And
Versus admitting it,
Yeah, but a
right?
lot of people think the problem is the guy who lives down the street, not something you discuss. It's just something you go kill, like a disease.
well, but if we can learn that point, that a lot of people think it is the person down the street, and it isn't really. Because
It's the fears of the person down the street.
that's right. Because if we look at Americans, okay, everybody was hated. The Irish were hated. The Italians were hated. The Jews were hated.
Biggest their initiation.
Right. Everybody had a hated period, right?
Amazing.
and yet, if we leave everybody alone, okay, a allow the human spirit to rise to its highest point. And I think if there's anything that we can say that America is unique about, is that we haven't hammered down the human spirit.
Well, a lot of that came out of World War II. And a lot of that was our parents' generation.
That's right.
And we were allowed to flourish within that. And
I agree with that.
I think we are probably beginning, middle, and end of that. I think things are going to either get darker or somehow they'll transform with it.
Well, I think we are transforming. I think the whole world is transforming, actually, because I look at places like India, and you were talking about it last week about people in northern India who are standing in the rubble of their houses and they're on cell phones, right?
Oh, that wasn't me.
Oh, somebody with a female voice was saying
Well,
it.
maybe it was the.
I thought it was you, but it doesn't matter who said it. The point is that, yes, India is crumbling, okay? India was built up by the Indian or the British Raj, and so many of the buildings are Victorian buildings. But if you go to Bombay, it's basically collapsing with the exception of, the one downtown area where they're building skyscrapers. But to a large extent, India is crumbling. But at the same time, you have a younger generation that's coming on, and they think they're Americans.
Tech sector, like the.
Pardon?
Well, a lot of them have been here going to school.
Yeah, I mean they're going to school. Yeah, I mean there was this guy who did a TED talk. It was an Indian. I forget his name right now, but he just put a laptop in an alcove out in the open, and just let kids use it, and had a modem on it, right? And so he comes back a couple months later, and the kids are all just teaching themselves. And this little 8-year-old kid says, "Hey, we need a faster modem." So they know what's important, right? And I know several examples of that.
They
And
teach themselves, which really,
yeah, they do.
they work as little communities. I've seen that. Because when I was teaching computer animation and graphics and stuff, we would, these guys were in their late teens, early. They were like kids. They would gather around, and the ones they were sharing of information as they brought it together. And even when I started, because there were no teachers, when I started, you had to learn on your own anyway. So we were all doing that all the time, where we would. And we were trying not to bother the technical people who did know the answers. So we were always, come on, you're cute. She likes you.
Yeah.
And we get something, bits and pieces and put it together.
Well, and people just flock to that. I mean, I remember in 1976, I didn't have a laptop at the time, or I didn't even know there was such a thing at the time. And I was on active duty in the Marine Corps for 2 weeks, and they were letting us play this little Star Wars game, which was like Pac-Man or something. And everybody was into it. I was into it. We were all into it. We were all fighting each other over time on the computer, right? Before that, though, when I was in the field artillery, the Army had computers, field artillery directing computers, right? The Marine Corps didn't have that, but we got to play with it. And the main thing that the Army guys were doing with it was playing poker with it. And they were playing poker they were starting this random number generator, and then they would stop it and then base your poker hand on what the random numbers really came up. Okay, that was in 1969, right? And then, gradually we got smarter, but we always gravitated, and it was huge. I mean,
But you work as a group. I was teaching a class. This was 1982, I guess, at Savannah College of Art and Design, and we had a lab, and they had nice equipment there. This is a rich school.
That's a good school.
And they had computers all around the room, right? And they had gotten them all set up, and everybody was working away, and then they decided they were going to network everything. That was cool. All of a sudden, we had this flight simulator warrior, warplanes thing. They're playing it virtually all the way around the room. Everybody's in. I couldn't even get off the ground. I'd say, "Here comes Bill." So I'd have to hit a random spot and take off from way off there, and then that'd be like 8,000 miles from everyone. Flying in, they'd be leaving. But they got together and figured it out among themselves because it was a way to interact in that space.
right.
And so, yeah, that's
So the human spirit is advancing, and because of the internet, it's advancing extremely fast. Extremely
and
fast.
in ways that we couldn't even envision before.
That's right, precisely. And so, I have no idea where we're going to be in a decade or 2 decades.
Which is kind of cool in a way because you have no idea. My son's always online talking to these guys while he plays games. He has
Yes,
no idea what they look like.
that's something
He
to
only
see
knows them
though.
through their voice. And
I don't understand. So it's mind blowing.
right.
I don't understand. How are you talking to them? How they're saying hi
Right.
to me?
There's no social stigma, associated with looks or wealth or
Right, sure.
any of
None of
those
that.
normal things that we had to deal with in high school.
None of
You're
that.
not wearing legions,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Barefoot. What's it too?
And
They're sitting
and
in
so
their
the
underwear
the whole
playing,
idea the whole idea
I
that
don't want to talk about it.
the whole idea that
First.
the whole idea that you would go out and bomb someone is just ridiculous. Okay, and 10 or 20 years from now, people will look back on this period and say, what was these people thinking? But you look at North Korea and you say, man, there's an example of, people the human spirit being held back